Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our CDA webinar series for 2024. Presenting today, Mastering the CDA Competency Standards, Elevating Early Childhood Educators' Proficiency and Impact. I bring you greetings from our CEO, Dr. Calvin Moore, Jr., and our Vice President of Programs, Abina Okran-Jackson. My name is Vilma Williams, and today I have the honor to have a very important person with us, Raquel Andrade. Raquel, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raquel Andrade, and I'm the Director of Credentialing, and we're extremely happy that you can be with us today.
And I am Vilma Williams, Senior Manager for the Multilingual Engagement and Learning Program. So before we start, I want to talk to you about some logistics. First of all, we want you to have questions. If you have any questions, we would like you to please use your feature that says questions. We prefer that you use that and not the chat. Also, I know that everyone is asking about your certificate of attendance, and we are very happy that we will provide you a certificate of attendance when if you finish the entire session. So to get your certificate of attendance, I want you to know that it will not get to you automatically. We're asking you to please write to us, and Raquel is putting in the chat the email. At the end of the session, we would like you to send us via email your request for your certificate. Just a little note saying, you know, I attended the session, please send me my certificate, and to expect your certificate in a week. Anything else about the certificates, Raquel, that you want to add?
No, I think you covered it, Vilma.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, if you have questions, please use the question button instead of the chat, okay? So let's talk about the goals for this session. Our goals for the session today are, first, we want to define what is competency and what are the competency standards for early childhood educators. Then we also want to provide you an overview of how the council evaluates an early childhood educator's competence. And finally, we will review the CDA competency standards as they relate to the verification visit and the CDA exam, basically the final assessment. So let's begin by talking about what are the competencies? What are competencies in general? Competencies are observable and measurable set of knowledge, skills, and abilities that are necessary to successfully perform in any job, right? Basically, it is what a person knows and a person can do. In the field of early childhood education, as well as in all the fields, when we refer to competence, we refer as someone who has experience, who has education, and who has ethics. You can be very experienced and don't know why you do things. You can be very knowledgeable and have the education, but in the case of early childhood education, you go to a classroom and you may not be able to perform, like even changing a diaper, right? So both of those skills are both components are very important. But also, you can be very experienced and very knowledgeable, but you may not be able to have the ethics to work with the children, with others. You know, you may be a little snappy, etc., etc. So for us, when we talk about competence, we're talking about these three dispositions, the skills and knowledge that are necessary to effectively function in a role. So competency standards. Let's talk about the CDA competency standards. All candidates are assessed based on CDA competency standards. These are national standards. They were created in the early 1970s by a consortium of educators and experts. Once the Head Start set the standards for the children and families, and the programs were created, they started to think, you know, how about the teachers now? You know, how are we going to evaluate them? And that's how the standards were created. And they have been very valuable in our profession as the criteria used to measure the performance of these professionals with children, families, colleagues, and the community in general. And they have been proven to be universally applicable. So the standards are universally applicable, but how to meet them changes from place to place, from depending on the culture of the people involved, the location of the programs, etc. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about all of this. So talking about the standards, we have to talk about the CDA credential because candidates are evaluated based on those competency standards. So the CDA credential was designed to assess an educator's competence in the language of their daily work. Most people, of course, we are in the United States and they get assessed in English because that is the language where they perform, that they used to perform. It's a time-tested credential. Over 1 million CDAs since 1975 have earned their CDA credential. It articulates to college credit in many associate's and bachelor's degree programs. What does this mean? It means that if you have a CDA in many of the programs in the nation, colleges and universities, they articulate so that you can continue your education. Like, for example, in Washington, D.C., I'm just paraphrasing, if you have your CDA, you can go to the University of the District of Columbia and they'll award you 9 credits for having the CDA, and then you can continue your education in the field of early childhood education. So the CDA Competency Standards in relation to the CDA credential, they provide a roadmap for what the educators should possess. Like we talked before, the knowledge, the skills, the ethics, to be able to effectively work in all settings, center-based preschool, infant, toddler, family child care, and also home visitor. The competency standards, and this is something that as instructors, and this session was promoted for instructors, so I'm going to be referring to that, to all of the information as talking with the instructors. So the CDA competency standards are divided in 6 competency goals. The 6 competency goals, I call them the dreams of the profession, and they are statements of general purpose or goals for CDA candidates' professional behavior. There are 6. And these 6 goals are further defined in more detail because the goals are so broad. They need to, we need more information. So they're further defined in more detail in 13 functional areas. These 13 functional areas describe the major tasks or functions that an early childhood educator or home visitor must complete to be able to carry out the competency goal, to meet that goal. And the competency standards have to be met during the demonstration step in the credentialing process. Now, part of that demonstration step is the review of the portfolio that has to be prepared during the preparation piece. So besides that, everything else has to be, basically, you bring your portfolio to show evidence that you can meet these standards too. And we're gonna go over the different stages, how this happens. So there is no way that someone can meet these standards by having just experience or just by having learned the theory. Both need to be mastered, even at a basic level for a CDA candidate, to be able to perform competently and be able to earn the CDA credential. So how meeting these standards allows an educator to meet the needs of children and their families in the context of the CDA? So when we combine those terms that I mentioned before, The competency standards are statements that set the standard of competency for the professional behavior. And competency standards are increasingly being used by professions and governors and to define qualifications required for professionals to practice in a discipline. In this case, the discipline is early childhood education. They define a range of levels of competency and the capabilities that are assumed to be achieved at these levels. So when we talk about competency standards, what you're seeing here is the entire competency standards, but they consist of 6 competency goals that are in colors. And each of these goals is further defined into functional areas, right? Some goals may have 3 functional areas, some have 4, and some have 1, as you can see, right? So we're going to be reviewing all of this. So the competency goals are 6, and they define the knowledge and skills that an early childhood educator must demonstrate to earn the CDA credential. You have to demonstrate, yes, I can establish and maintain a safe, healthy learning environment. I can advance physical and intellectual competence in the children. I am able to support, and I am able to, excuse me for a second. Yeah, I'm able to support, and I'm able to social and emotional development and provide positive guidance. In the past, guidance was, we talk of guidance in terms of discipline, right? But we prefer to use guidance. I'm able to establish positive and productive partnerships with families. I'm able to ensure a well-run, purposeful program that is responsive to participants, to all, children and adults. And I am committed to the profession. I'm able to maintain a commitment to my profession, because once you are in the field and you are earning your CDA, this is not a job anymore, it's a profession. Okay. Any questions so far, Raquelita?
Vilma, I was actually going to ask that if people have questions that they put it in the chat as opposed to the question feature. So I don't see
Okay,
any
that's good.
questions quite
Okay.
yet.
Okay, fine. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna look at some, because it will be impossible to do all. This session is a summary, an overview of the competency standards, right? And if you look, and we're gonna talk about the competency standards book, where you will have everything you need in every detail, that you need as instructors to help the candidates. So when we look at in the book, when you look at each of these competency goals in their functional areas, you will find, number 1, the definition of the competency goal. Here is in green, right? To focus, okay, to establish and maintain a safe, healthy learning environment. And then there are 3 functional areas within: safe, healthy, and learning environment. So let's take a peek at safe, right? We're gonna see some of these. For this first competency standard, under the functional area of safe, an educator provides a safe environment to prevent and reduce injuries. That is the definition of safe. That's your job, educator. You need to provide a safe environment, and you need to prevent, in this environment, to prevent and reduce injuries. And what does this mean? The book even has items, and under items, it has examples of many things that you may do, or the educator may do, to meet this goal, right? So items are the behaviors and the things that we expect the educators to comply with under the SAFE. In this example, for example, and I pick up some of them, I couldn't pick up all of them for the purpose of this training. Are the children supervised at all times? That's one of them. Emergency procedures, are they visible? are they taught to the children? And food that are known choking hazards are not served to children. I'm just, like I said, I put some examples of the items here. How do we use this? When, and I want to be very clear on this, because when you teach CDA classes, and I'm pretty sure many of you do, the goal for you is that the candidate learns the theory behind this in practices, so that they can make a connection between what I do and what is the theory behind this? Who teaches this? Is it just an invention? Is it somebody just in their sleep came up with it? Or does it have scientific basis for this? Okay, so there is lots of things behind these items. Are the children supervised at all times? What we learn in the theory, things that we can learn in theory is how to supervise children, hazards for children. Whatever your courses or your theory may be defined is what I need to know. But how do I put that in practice when I go on field trips, when I go outside, even when I go around the block with my children, for example, right? And indoors, because I need to know that, for example, when you go to the CDA classes, you learn that if you have objects that are specific measurement, they cannot be placed at the view of children. They should not, there are appropriate toys and inappropriate materials and inappropriate toys, right? So with that information, I'm able to look in my classroom and to find out what can I do to make my classroom or my family child care, or how do I help parents make their home safe, right? So it is not just the theory, like I said at the beginning, is not the practice. So behind this what I'm showing you here, the competency standards, including competency goals and functional areas, is what I am ultimately going to demonstrate to the council that I meet. I learned my theory already, and I have practiced. I have made that connection between both of them. And now I am able to say and to demonstrate, yes, I can provide a safe environment to reduce injuries, to avoid illnesses and all of that. And I can meet when I write my portfolio, I can talk about this. When they come to observe me, I can do this. When I take the exam, I know the answers because I know this. I have made that connection, right? So I am able to know that I have to supervise children. I'm able to know why and how I handle the emergency procedures and how I teach them to children. Okay, so what I'm trying to say to you is that this is the backbone of the system, and all candidates will be evaluated in different ways, and we're going to see this in a little while, through the writing of the portfolio, to the observation, to the verification visit, which is the observation part of that, and when I take my exam. Okay, so again, one more time, the goal of the instructor, if you're teaching CDA, is to help the candidates learn the theory, apply it into the practice, know why am I doing these things, so that I can plan and execute my program in an appropriate way, what we call appropriate practice. I hope that makes sense to you. No questions yet, right, Raquelita?
We do have a question about, will this recording be available to listen to after the Zoom? It will. It will be available in our CAN platform in the resource section. And in order to view it, you just want to make sure that you are a member of CAN to be able to access that recording. But it will be available, I believe, within the week.
And if you're not a member of CAN, at the end, we're going to tell you how can you become a member of CAN, which is a wonderful idea, and it's free and it's great. There's nothing to lose, everything to gain, right? Okay, so let's look at another functional area. So we're still within the competency goal 1, right? To establish a safe, healthy learning environment. And we have talked about safe. Let's go and move to the next one. And we're going to talk now about healthy. So the goal is, the dream is that people applying for CDA, the teacher applying, whoever's applying for CDA, can establish and maintain a safe and healthy learning environment. That's the dream, right? But this involves 3 functional areas. We saw safe, now we're gonna talk about healthy. So what is the definition of healthy? The definition of healthy is that the educator promotes good health and nutrition and provides an environment that contributes to the prevention of illness. Good health and nutrition. The educator promotes good health and nutrition and provides an environment that contributes to the prevention of illnesses, right? So some of the items that I chose for this training include clean and sanitize materials and equipment. Does the candidate do that? That is something that is going to be evaluated when you write your portfolio, when you are observed, and when you take your exam, right? In different ways, you're gonna be evaluated to demonstrate this. Do you use and you teach the correct hand washing procedures? Do you use sanitary diapering and toileting? Right? Now, these are items of great performance that we expect, right? So that we know that, yes, you're meeting this healthy portion of this big goal, number 1, right? So again, your job is to help them learn the theory behind this and then practice it, connect it into the practice. Oh, that is what I do that, okay? If I don't wash my hands correctly, I can cause a pandemic, I can cause infection. What happens? All of that theory, the scientific piece, I need to know. And I may be a person that washes my hands all the time, but I don't know why. That's not complete. I have to know everything, right? That's the whole idea of a CDA. Not only you know the theory, you can put it into practice to create appropriate practice. You can teach it to others. You can talk about it. You're comfortable with it. Therefore, you're able to perform. You can write in your portfolio this. You can be observed doing it. And then when you take your exam, you know the answers that are correct because you know how it works. Okay, moving along. And then we have another one, serves nutritious meals and snacks, right? So I think that this is very self-explanatory. And what I'm doing is I'm making sense of why do we have this. You probably all have seen the Competency Standards books. And the books have 3 sections. The first section is information about the preparation. How do you prepare? What is all this about? The second session is just the competency standards and what I'm explaining to you. What are they? They involve competency goals, functional areas. Under the functional areas, you have items. Those are the big performing pieces that you need to demonstrate as an educator so that you can get your CDA. But to be able to meet this performance, these items, you need to have that instruction and that practice again, right? So if we want an educator to use space, relationships, materials and routines as resources for constructing an interesting, secure, and enjoyable environment that encourages and fosters trust, play, exploration, interaction, and learning, because we know all of those things are important for children's develop, right? What are the things that we're focusing? And if you want the list of the entire items, you have your book, okay? And there is another source of information that I will present to you in a minute, where you can also go to see the items, right? So the learning environment, people who don't have a lot of training probably think the learning environment is what you see in the classroom or in the family childcare home, or if you visit a home for the home visitors, right? But we know when you go to classes and you make that connection that the most important piece in that learning environment is the teacher, the adult. So how is your disposition? Is it warm and welcoming? Are you creating an environment where people want to be there and learn? Do you use sound judgment with daily and weekly plans? Are your plans great for the children according to their developmental level? Or are you the type of teacher that just puts paper and crayons or plate on the tables every Monday because that's the beginning of the week? Unless you have a purpose, unless you have a plan, then you should be individualizing and also providing for the group, right? Do you use different strategies with children to transition between activities? Have you learned in your CDA classes that transition time is extremely important because children below 5 need time to move from one activity to another one. And then you even have to go to individualizing how this child moves from transition to transition versus this other child. And then you have to do other specific things, right? Individualizing. But do you know that children, for example, following Piaget, that they judge everything based on one experience, and that is great for teachers, because if you can sing the same song to move from, from cleanup time to the wash hands, go to lunch, and if you start singing clean up time, pick up the toys and put them on the shelf, they already know that. Before you finish the first sentence, they start picking up. Or you can announce it, we're going to pick up in 10 minutes. Some people put specific songs. Some people put a specific hat. The thing is that you have to handle their transitions between activities in a very excellent way. That's another example. Why? Because when you do your assessment, when you complete your portfolio, when you write in your portfolio, when you're being observed, and when you take your exam, you're going to have to demonstrate this, that yes, I meet this goal because in all these functional areas, I can comply with these performance items, okay? So that finished the first one, right? So let's move a little bit further. Do you want another one? Is this good enough? Or do you want another one that is a little bit more comprehensive? I can go to 3, to goal 3, which is the most popular. People ask, how do you do this? If you can respond, would you want me to move to 3 to ensure that we cover everything? Yes, no? What are they saying, Raquelita? I see Sylvia saying yes because she has her camera on, so.
No response. It
No
says move
response.
to 3.
Okay, I'm gonna move to 3, okay?
Okay.
So we are passing 2 to advanced physical and intellectual competence, and we're gonna go to 3. I have a lot of questions always on 3, which is the goal is to support social and emotional development and provide positive guidance, right? So the dream is that teachers that you're preparing, teachers that are applying to get a CDA can meet this goal, this dream, that you are able to support the social and emotional development of the children and provide them with positive guidance. That is not just taking care of children. I know that a lot of people think, I'm looking for a job. What is the easiest? Oh, I'll take care of children. That is not, it doesn't work like that. Even to just take care of children, like clean their nose and wipe their butts, you still have to have some science to do it in an appropriate way. And I think you agree with me. But if you are an early childhood educator, we're talking about a profession. Supporting the social and emotional development and providing guidance to the children requires theory, practice, requires all those things that we talked at the beginning. So this functional area has this, is specified, is more specific in the following functional areas. We start with the first one, self. So what does it mean? Self. It means that the educator develops a warm, positive, supportive, and responsive relationship with each child and helps each child learn about and take pride in his own or her individual and cultural abilities. Not everybody can do that. Number one, you have to have compassion. You have to know your children. You have to know who's coming to your classroom or to the home. You need to know who they are. And the warm and positive, disposition, you don't acquire sometimes that in a class. You have to develop that positive, responsive relationships. You have to know that every child that comes there is somebody's child, and that they have hopes and dreams, and that your actions, the experiences that they get from the adult, the educator, are going to mark their lives forever. So even children that come from environments where they have a lot of tragedy, or life is very difficult, can be strengthened, can be even changed. If one adult can be this, can be warm and positive, and can make them feel that they are important, that they are loved, right? So this is very important. So what are some of the items that we look for in the performance, in the professional performance of the teachers? Does the educator's interaction support a child's individuality? Do you all call them guys and you expect everybody to be like little soldiers and behave the same way? Or do you really know each of them and you can individualize? Is the educator sensitive to child's feelings and needs? And to be sensitive to children's feelings and needs, you need to know who they are, where they come from. Do they have a mom? Do they have a dad? Do they live in a home? Do they live in a house? Do they live in an apartment? Do they live in a shelter? Do they have food? Are they in food stamps? You need to know all of that, right? The educator encourages children to develop a sense of independence while being respectful of family preferences and cultural differences. That's another thing that needs to be very consciously made. So again, going back to the point that you have to know them. The teachers that you teach have to know that this is so important, and that children need to develop some sense of independence. But here we have also to be careful. It says we have to have respect for the family preferences and cultural differences. So this should be a course, you can invent it and you can find out, how can you do this? Do you know, for example, that being independent is a big deal in the United States in general, right? But we're very diverse. Do you know, for example, that in Japan, children who go to pre-K or they go to nursery, they use a uniform, but it's like a cover, that has buttons on the back, and the buttons on the back are purposely put there so that the parents, before they leave, can button their children's, before they go home, right? In the United States, we don't do that. We want them to button their buttons, which is fine, because children also learn that there are some things that you do at school and there are some things that you do at home, and that is fine. That is one of what Sue Bredeka mentions, when she talks about, when you encounter things like that, she says, don't choose between we do it this way or we do it that way. She says that you can do it this way and you can do it that way, which, makes it very, very diverse, it respects the diversity of the families. So all of those little things that I'm mentioning are things that the candidate should have learned, should be aware from my courses and my practice. That's what is so important to know who's in my classroom, right? So we're gonna move on to the next one.
Vilma,
Yeah.
Marcella was indicating individuality
Asian?
to include their likes and dislikes, not just their characteristics, right?
Absolutely. When I say who they are, everything, some children may be to the norms, to the continuum, may be a little behind, some may be ahead of time. You need to know if the children are so eloquent. Some children don't talk that much, some children love to sleep next to the window because there's a little light. And then we're going to talk about that when we get to the guidance, right? But some children even like some smells, just like us. So many of you probably love perfumes, and some of you love some perfumes, but other perfumes, you can't stand them, right? You have to get out of the room because it's too much, right? So we have to know that. We have to know about them. Not Barbara Bowman says it's not only that you have to be amazed, you have to be interested. So that means you have to get to know them, talk to the families, those little times where teach your teachers, those little times where the parents come and to say good hello and goodbye. Those are the precious times that you can, even one tiny conversation can teach you something about the families. Those questionnaires that we require at the beginning of the year, you know, those are not required, but great recommendations. At the beginning of the year, send to the parents questionnaires before the children come to you, so that you know things that they're going to tell you. The questionnaires say, what is the name of your child? How do you call the child at home? Even things that we may find that are not important, that are extremely important. How do they call the private parts? Because if, you know, I had in my classroom a child who needed to go to the bathroom, and he says, I need to use my Tony, I need to use my Tony, you know, and that was his pee-pee, you know. Other people call it pirulines, other people call it penne. Depends on your penis. Depends on what the families want to call it. But if you don't know, the child can urinate in front of you because you didn't understand what they were talking about. So those are the things you get to know them. Like the person that just asked, you know, made a comment. Yeah, not only physically strong, weak, no, but also how are they like? You know, what things have happened before the child came to school? You know, that's why you ask those questions. You know, who brings the child? Who's going to bring the child back? That's so important. That is like a big tool for the teacher to have and to hold the whole day, you know, if a child gets upset, you know. So we're going to move talking about this. Okay. So social, that's another functional area within this goal, to support social and emotional development and provide guidance, right? And what does this mean in regards to social? It says the educator helps each child feel accepted in the group, helps children learn to communicate and get along with others, and encourages feelings of empathy and mutual respect among children and adults. Okay, this is so big, you know, I cannot teach a whole class, but you guys know because you are instructors, right? So if you as an adult in that classroom, your job is to help each child. Each of them is very important, right? But you want them to be part of the community. You want them to be part of the group, accepted by the group, because children can be very cruel. If they don't like something about a child, they can say, look, he has this, look, his shirt is torn, oh, yucky, you know. You're there to level that. You're there to establish that we are a community, and that, you know, you have to empathize for other people, and that you have to respect them, not only among children, but also the adults have to respect the children, and the children have to respect the adults, right? So what are the things that the council is going to look? Some of them, I'm just giving you samples. Does the educator applying for CDA, does he or she promote a child's sense of belonging in a classroom or a group? How do you promote a sense of belonging? In the book, you have a lot of examples, but you can have your very own examples, you know? Let's say that a child comes and he's from another culture, another country, and does not speak English. It's going to be difficult to on the first day to say, or even in the first week, you know, I belong here, you know, everybody loves me, you know. But the teacher can set the tone and learn. If you know ahead of time, you know who's coming to your party, you know, you can say some words in the language of the child, you know, and the child is going to look at you like, oh, she knows, that sounds like home. You know, they're not going to be able to tell you to express it, but they will feel it. Experts said children will look at you and you change their world. You know, they feel so good. That's one way. You can teach a song in the child's language and the other children will learn it. That even multiplies, you know, things like that. Helps. Another thing that we're looking for is, does the person applying for CDA help children understand their feelings and others? Do you understand? Have you learned active listening in your classroom? Have you learned that sometimes children don't have the vocabulary to express what they're feeling, but that you can ask questions that are non-intrusive with a lot of love and care, because you have to be warm. Remember, that's one of the things that we're looking for. Looks like you are sad. Do you need a hug? Yeah, I give you a hug. Oh, you smell so good. I'm so happy you're in this classroom. I'm so happy to see you here every day. Those are the things that you have to put into connection, what you learn from your theory and how to apply it into practice. Does the educator applying for CDA discusses diversity when interacting with children? To discuss diversity, you have to be prepared. That doesn't come just like that. You have to learn, about how this works. We are in a country where we have become very diverse, and we have to, again, going back to the concept, who's in your classroom, who's coming to your home, family child care home, or what kind of families do you visit, what language do they speak, and all of that. But celebrating everybody's diversity, it should enrich the classroom rather than being an obstacle. Okay, you should enrich your own diversity. You should enrich your own cultural level so that you can pass that. The children feel that, feel those things, right? So moving along, now we go with guidance, okay, which is our last one for this goal. So the goal is, the big goal, the dream is to support social, emotional development and positive guidance, right? So now we're gonna focus on guidance. What does this mean in terms of guidance? It means that the educator applying for CDA provides a supportive environment and uses effective strategies to help all children learn and practice appropriate and acceptable behaviors as individuals and as group, and effectively provide support for children with persistent challenging behaviors. There is no way that an educator can do this if you don't know your children. So that is part of your class. The preparation is how important that is. And what we're looking for is, does the educator acknowledge positive behaviors? Do you make a big deal of positive behaviors? Because children like to repeat that, right? Do you model appropriate behaviors? Do you set appropriate limits and expectations? One of those comes from the classes. We know sharing, for example, when I hear somebody talking, share your toys, share your teddy bear, share. I think she needs more training or he needs more training, because sharing doesn't come until 7, right? So my limits and expectations have to be based on that. Have to be based knowing children cannot share, so I have to provide lots of toys that are exactly the same. Even if it's the same toy, different color, they think it's different. So it has to be the same color, exactly the same, right? To avoid behaviors, or fights and things that are gonna happen. Does the educator helps children learn to articulate their emotions and respond to challenging situations? Are they able to compromise? Are they able to learn to take turns? Are they able to say, at some point, I'm mad because he hit me, or, and to respond, to make agreements? All of that is just one functional area, but all of that is involved in goal number 3. Okay, and last, use appropriate techniques to handle negative behaviors. I love when the definition of guidance, I said strategies, because a teacher is like a magician. Under your sleeves, you have all these strategies, all these tricks. You pull one, if it works, great. Doesn't work, you pull another one, right? But are your tricks, are your strategies appropriate to handle negative behaviors, right? Do you know that when you work with toddlers, they're gonna say no to everything, right? Because they are creating, they have just discovered, I am not part of my mommy, I am myself, and I can say no. So rather than creating a power struggle, do you know that you can create activities where they have lots of opportunities to say no? Songs and even little things like I say yes and you say, and everybody's gonna scream no, so they need that, right? So those are little examples. In the book, you have lots of examples, and I'm pretty sure that you have, and your teachers have more examples, like to write another book on your very own. We're gonna move on, and we're gonna pass the families. I think you get the idea. Program management has only one functional area, and professionalism has one functional area. The last two, program management, professionalism, are focused on the candidate himself or herself. They're not going to talk about children. They're not going to talk about, or they're not going to demonstrate anything with children or families. It's just about me. How am I a good manager, and how I take this as a professional, and I maintain my commitment to professionalism. Okay. For the sake of time, now we're going to move to a little bit. We're going to give you a little bit of, a snapshot of how the council measures and evaluates an early childhood educator's competence based on the competency standard. So what I explained to you is in general, but let's don't forget that the CDA competency goals is the criteria that defines the knowledge and the skills that someone should possess. Those are the dreams of the profession. And the functional areas are a category of responsibility that defines the role of the early childhood educator in relationship to children and families, right? So it's in the competency standards books that your teachers use. Number one, they should begin the classes with this book. Highly recommended. And this book should be the book where by the end of the classes, this book should be wrinkled and marked, and because you have everything here, everything is in the book. If it's not in the book, it's not true. Okay, so they are essential for the process, and they provide you with everything you need to prepare. Like I said, the second portion of the book is just the competency standards, right? And the books may look the same, but the competency standards are the same, but the items and the examples vary according to the setting. So I have to demonstrate, if I'm a teacher applying for CDA, I have to demonstrate basically on the demonstration piece. What you're looking here is all the stages that the candidate has to go through to get a CDA. The purple stage is the preparation, right? And then you apply, and then you have the final assessment, which is the verification visit and the exam, right? So in the demonstration, you have to prepare your portfolio under the documentation. And then during the final assessment, which is the verification visit and the exam, you have to demonstrate everything that I have been saying, that you have to demonstrate, that you have made that connection. Now you can demonstrate that. So the final assessment, the demonstrate portion of the competence is the CDA verification visit and the exam together. Once you demonstrate that, you can get your CDA. So we all know that during the verification visit, this is going to be administered by a professional development specialist who will be assessing the professional development of this early childhood educator. It is the role of this PD specialist essential to identify which practitioners need special knowledge, skills, and dispositions, and how they can best be supported in obtaining these capabilities. They have to evaluate the candidates, right? They will review the professional portfolio. They follow the model ROR, review the professional portfolio. They observe the educator working with children directly. In the case of home visitors, working with the families of those children, and reflect with the educator. They have a reflection time with the educator. And then the professional development specialist sends the scores to the council through an online scoring tool. And that is the model that I mentioned. So when they review the portfolio, the contents of the portfolio, they take an hour. They observe the candidate working with children, recording, the evidence, the consistent evidence, and the criterion evidence, and that's 2 hours, the observation. And candidates should complete a regular, day. They should not try to do new things or put up something special. Just do exactly what you do every day, you know. And then the reflective piece, which is reflect, they will reflect with the candidate, focus on the candidate's strengths and the areas that still need to grow. And that is like 1 hour. So that is the verification visit. So during the verification visit, during the review of the portfolio, they will review the portfolio, and the role of the PD specialist is to find evidence that the candidate meets the competency standards that we have been talking about. In other words, the candidate's practice meets the definitions of those functional areas. That's the 6 competency goals in different ways. The professional portfolio has different pieces, different parts, cover sheets, my portfolio cover sheet, the summary of my education and the documents to verify that, my family questionnaires, a summary, and my completed questionnaires go behind in my reflective dialogue worksheet, where I have written what my parents believe are my strengths and the things that I still need to grow. And what I call the next part of the portfolio is the heart of the portfolio, which is the resource collection, the reflective statements of competence, and the professional philosophy statement. So today I'm going to focus a little bit on the reflective statements of competence, because they have been designed for the candidate to demonstrate, again, that I meet those 6 competency goals. So every time I write a reflective statement, I have to begin with a paragraph where I have to talk about how I meet this competency goal or this competency statement, a paragraph for each of them. And then I just have to follow my book and talk about what the book is asking me. Usually the book says, remember the resource collection that you wrote, numbered so-and-so. Remember the menu, for example? Tell us about who wrote it. If you wrote it, tell us about, you know, what you believe are the strengths of this menu, whatever they're asking. If you didn't write this menu, what would you recommend? How would you make it better? Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, right? Well, guess what? That piece is trying to test the candidate's competence in competency goal 1, right? We're talking about health, because we're talking about the menu, right? So that is how it works, you know. Everything that we request for the candidate to write has a link with a competency goal, which definitely has a link with one of the functional areas, or maybe more than one of the functional areas. Everything that we request has a reason why, and the reason is we're testing you to see if you meet these competency goals. Thus, you meet these competency standards. And then it says, follow the instructions, and they keep asking you more questions and more questions, so the candidate answers. And then it says, candidate, because when they know how to do it, they can stop. Do your best, and no more than 500 words. Okay, here again, you know, these are the competency standards, 6 competency goals with their respective functional areas. Observation. When the candidate is being observed with the children and families, the professional development specialist is looking for evidence, consistent behavior of the candidate, and skill and knowledge as defined by the competency standards. The PD specialist will capture various occurrences of consistent behavior or performance during the activities, the interactions, and the climate of their learning environment, indoor and outdoor. And to do that, they use this comprehensive scoring instrument that is at the end of the competency standard book. It's not a secret. Nothing is a secret. So I advise that the candidates look in this instrument to see what are they looking for. It's designed to collect evidence of the candidate's consistent performance based on the competency standards. What do we mean by that? It's divided in competency goals and 13 functional areas. And finally, the exam. The candidates have to complete an exam at the Pearson VUE Testing Center. And the exam consists of multiple choice questions, 65. And they, you know, they have also some questions that have a picture, and they, you know, with brief situations. They have 15 minutes for introductions and 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete the exam. But guess what? All the questions in the exam, in this test, are based on appropriate practice. And these questions are based on the competency standards again. 6 competency goals and 13 functional areas. So let's practice a little bit before we finish, okay? I'm gonna read this and you tell me, what are we testing? What competency goal are we testing? In what functional area do you think? And then you write it in your where you're writing, okay? What is the best activity for a 2-year-old child? A, write with it, number 2 pencil on a very large piece of paper. B, read a story, short story, sitting on a chair at a table. C, go up and down steps with some adult assistance. And D, watch a Disney movie for 1 hour. Okay. So what we tell candidates is eliminate the ones that you think are not the ones so that you can find buried into these 4 questions the one. But I'm not asking you for the correct question. I'm asking you here is, what do you think, what competency goal are we testing? You can open your microphone or you can write it if you wish. What competency goal are we testing? In what functional area specifically?
Several people are saying 2.
Okay, what is 2? Somebody read it to me.
Specifically, yep. 2 and physical, motor skills.
Perfect. Could be, yeah. Very good.
Physical. Competency goal 2, physical.
Yeah, it could be cognitive too, right? Right? It could, in physical, definitely physical, because at 2, children are exercising their large muscles. So the best activity for this is go up and down the steps. Correct. You're correct. Very good. See? Okay. So about this one, 2 toddlers have been fighting over a toy. What is the best way for the teacher to intervene? A, tell the children to stop it in a loud voice so that they learn to respect the teacher. Take the toy away and place it in a high shelf until they learn to share. Put both children in timeout so they understand they must play better. D, kindly bring both children together. So go to their eye level and ask them to take turns to explain what happened. Listen while they talk and propose to them to take turns to play with the toy. Number 1, what goal do you think is being tested here? In what functional area if you want to be sophisticated and now you know so much, you know? Do we have any answers?
A couple of people are saying 3. 3 guidance, 3 social.
Absolutely. And we may be testing more than one, right? The focus here is guidance, right? Definitely, if you're that teacher that I mentioned, you know, you made a connection, you went to your classes, you know what is best for children, you know that timeout is out of the question because that's ancient and it's not good practice anymore. And sharing, we already talked about that, right? So it's 2 left, A and D. You don't yell to children, stop it in a loud voice, no? So that's out. So it's the D, right? So that's how we test candidates for the test. And I'm not gonna go over all of them because I think, oh, we still have time, right, Raquel?
We do, Vilma.
Okay, sorry. I was thinking 2 and it's 2:30, sorry. Okay, so let's go to another one, okay. It says, aside from the custodial parent or guardian, to whom many early childhood staff properly release a child, or to let them go home, right? A, to a parent the child recognizes who lives apart from the child. B, to an individual authorized in writing by the custodial parent or guardian. C, to a sibling or other close relative of the custodial parent or guardian. D, to anyone known and trusted by at least one person on the staff. What are we testing? What goal, what functional area are we testing here in regards to the competency standards?
Somebody's saying goal 5, functional area 12.
Okay.
Somebody else says program management.
Excellent. Program management could be one.
Self and a little bit, safe and a little bit of self.
Safe is great. Yeah, the focus is safe.
Competency goal 5.
Okay. So you get the idea, right? So we have given the candidate opportunity to demonstrate I am meeting this goal when they write the portfolio. When they did the observation, we also were observing for performance that is consistent. I'm not saying the PD specialist is not there to judge incidents, but consistent performance in 2 hours. Did you talk to the children? Did you address them by their names? Or were you using, hey, little one, skinny one, come here, how are you? Were you, in cases like this, somebody came to pick up a child and then the PD specialist witness that you say, can you please wait in the waiting room because I need to check something. And then you went and say, she's not in the list to pick them up. Somebody come here, the director, so whatever you're supposed to do. All of that they're witnessing, right? Okay, and now is the exam. And in a different way, they're not gonna ask you questions about what is the theory of the permanent perception by Piaget. They're not gonna ask you that. They're gonna ask you appropriate practice like this. Things that happen every day that you may be aware, like this one, for example. Which tip is best to follow when modeling conversation skills to young children? A, focus on the child and correct his or her answers. B, if child does not want to talk, leave him alone or her alone. C, when it's your turn to speak, add some information related to the conversation. D, if a child asks a question, briefly answer and move on, leave. Number one, what are we trying to test here? What is the candidate here given an opportunity to prove competence about which of the goals and functional areas?
Somebody says guidance, social, communication.
Bingo to all of them. Bingo, bingo, bingo. It's a lot of them because sometimes the functional areas are like when you have paintings, you paint blue, red, and sometimes they kind of, mix with each other. That's how they are sometimes. But the focus here is communication too. How do you speak to children? Because they're learning. Remember the first 5 years? They create a basis for their future. They're learning from you. Sometimes they go home and they play teacher. They copy exactly what you do, right? Or what the teacher does. So yeah, conversation is not a monologue. It's not a set of instructions. What color are your peas? What color is your orange? That's not a conversation, Conversation is taking turns. And when it's your turn, you add a little bit. A child says to you, my shoes blue. Oh, yes, your shoes are blue and they are very pretty. They have laces. Who bought you your shoes? That is a conversation. Not, what color are your shoes? Blue. Good. Henry, what color are your shoes? Red. Okay. Elizabeth, what color are your shoes? Nothing. No answer. That's not a conversation, right? So we're testing that, but we're not testing it with scientific words. We're testing it with appropriate practice. Next. Another example, Aster's mother has confided in her teacher that she's having money problems. What is the best response of the teacher? A, inform all the staff so they are aware of the situation. B, inform all the parents to see if they can help Aster's family. C, maintain confidentiality and provide her with information or resources available. And D, offer to babysit for Aster for free. What are we testing here? What is the competency goal that we're testing in which functional area or areas we may be testing?
I see professionalism. Professionalism.
A lot of them professionalism.
Families.
Great. Bingo again. Yes, absolutely. Are you being professional? And that's the answer, right? Do you maintain confidentiality? right? Because the other things, are not appropriate. But you don't arrive to answer this correctly if you don't have the theory behind and you have not practiced it. Remember, one piece of that component of being competent is ethics, right? So that is, you learn, you become educated, you put it into practice, you made a connection, and there goes the bingo. You answer like this in the exam. So if you answer, inform other parents to see if they can help us their family, something is missing there and you need more training, right? That's what, when candidates don't make it and they don't get CDAs, we give them a letter that says, these are your areas where you need to grow. One of them may be professionalism. Why? Because if you answer like this here, probably during your observation, you also demonstrated something that was not appropriately. Maybe in your portfolio, you wrote something that is not so strong, right? But when you are competent, it shows everywhere. It shows just everywhere, and the PD specialists during the observation are trained to have that eagle eye, and those ears to capture those things. And the test is designed to provide you with this multiple choice answers that give you an opportunity to capture the one that is correct, right? Okay. Okay. Any questions? Anything else? Any questions that you have? Anything that you want me to repeat because we have time, or we can move on? Are you okay? So while you think about that, I can tell you about joining the Council Alumni Network, most known as CAN. This to me I get so excited about CAN because it's called the Council Alumni Network, but it's not really an alumni. It's for anybody who wants to belong to this family of the council. It is like a social platform that is professional. It's better than Facebook because you take full advantage of everything that we offer to you. You can make connections with other colleagues and other programs. You get to be invited to events that are just for CAN members. You get to hear from personalities in the field of early childhood education that you have them close. You can answer questions. You can form your very own groups. We have different groups, such as the one for home visitors. We have one called Lazos Latinos for people who speak Spanish and want, or anybody, so you can create your very own group. There is a group for the people that live in the south, right, Raquel? One that live in the north, east, west. So take advantage of this. And like Raquel says, if you're a member of the council, you get to take advantage. Even with these events like today, you get invited. You get your certificates, like Raquel informed you, and you only go to councilcan.org to join. And it's free.
Yep. And Mariella is asking if CAN is for PD specialists as well.
Absolutely, for anybody. It's for friends of the council, CDA. It is for directors, PD specialists, people who want to be PD specialists, candidates, people who have CDA, advisor, coaches, trainers, anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are even a few focus groups for PD specialists, so absolutely.
Yeah, and you can form your own group. We need a group for family child care educators. We don't have that, for example, right? And you're very creative. You can create your very own group. And then in there, you have the opportunity also to share activities, information, events in your communities. You can even ask, does anybody know about a job? Or if you have jobs to offer, you can do whatever you think is best for you, for your community. Any more questions?
I don't see any more.
If you want me to go back to anything that I kind of didn't give you all of the functional areas because my timing was off. I thought we had until 2, so I apologize. But I gave you all the information. I didn't miss anything. We could have spent more time with the functional areas, but you have them in your book too. and you have all the items. You know, in my presentation, I could only put some because obviously it's a PowerPoint and I cannot fit everything there, right? We want you to stay connected to us to learn more. We want you to visit our website, has everything, all the information that you need, you know, the website, www.cdacouncil.org. You can subscribe to, we have a council link newsletter. It's very interesting. You can just subscribe. Everything is free. And you can keep in touch with us, join Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. Anything else, Raquelita?
Yeah, I see a few people are asking about how to view this webinar. The recording will be posted in CAN shortly after this session is over. And so in order to be able to view the recording, you do have to become a member of CAN, but as Vilma just said, that's a free membership. So as long as you become a member of CAN, you will have access to the resource library in CAN where these recordings will be posted. And then Jackie is asking, can we cover the portfolio? We actually have a webinar that I believe we're offering it in this series. It is a separate webinar that does go over the portfolio.
Yeah, we have webinars for the exam. If you have students who are very nervous to take the exam, or if you want to know more about the exam, if as an instructor, we highly recommend that you check that, you know, you attend that webinar. It's really fun. And somebody wrote to me the other day saying thank you because she took the exam again and passed after the webinar. She says, I wasn't nervous anymore like I was the first time after the webinar. So that really was wonderful, you know? So CAN has all of the promotion for the webinars for you to attend.
Yep, that's another good reason to join CAN. We have all the webinars posted and promoted within CAN. So if you are looking for that portfolio webinar or any of the other webinars, we do try to announce them on Facebook and so forth, but you can find them directly in CAN.
Yeah, that webinar for the portfolio will be great for instructors too, and coaches and anybody who's helping candidates, because we give you lots of examples. We practice with you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, one more question asking about what is the email to receive the certificate? The email to receive the certificate is alumni@cdacouncil.org.
And you posted on the chat, right?
I did.
Okay. And that is also to join CAN. Any other questions? This is your opportunity to ask questions, ask anything. If you have questions that are more personal, like, you know, you can write to us too, or you can call the 800 number, right, Raquel? They can call the 800 number anytime to get answers.
Yes, we have customer support agents available Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have agents available in both English and Spanish who can answer any general questions about the CDA process, but also check on the status of individual applications.
Any more questions? Raquel, you see any questions?
Oh, sorry, I was just typing in the email for the certificate.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, I do see someone saying if candidates watch these presentations, can they count towards the 120 clock hours of training?
I don't think so. These are informative presentations. The 120 hours of training is training that is comprehensive, where candidates are led to learn from one piece of information to add another piece of information. Okay, so that is why we do not accept workshops at conferences, for example, because those are independent events, right? Unless, you know, in reference to the conferences, unless you as an instructor say, I want you to go to NAEYC, the conference, and I want you to specifically go to this session that is called multicultural, whatever, okay, something. And then you come back and you're gonna write me an essay about it, and you're going to share with the class what you learned. And I'm gonna give you for that 2 hours or whatever you decide. If you take that and then you make it part of your training, yes, of course. But individual events do not count for the 120 hours. It has to be part of your training. I hope that's clear. Any other questions?
Nope, I don't see any other questions.
Okay. Well, if you don't have any other questions, we give you back 15 minutes of your precious time. And we hope that everything that you do is successful. We wish you to have a wonderful week. And remember that we're here always to serve you and to invite you to all of the other webinars that we have for the rest of the year. Raquel?
Yep, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in some of our other presentations this year.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.